But hey, it's Saturday and we are streaming from the Scottish lands. It was a wonderful day today. It's weird because, you know, being in British time over here, it's a stream starting at 5 p.m. for me. So Ascension and I had like a day out. We went to a farmer's market, then we went to Troon, and we went to like an arts and craft market there and had a little lunch, and then came back. Like, we had a full day, and now I get to spend the night playing video games with all you guys and making some video games. Bum, bum, bum. Bum, bum, bum. Have you ever played around with Python or Pygame? I have. I think Python is a wonderful, wonderful language. I haven't spent a lot of time with it, but I think it was, it's one of those languages that's really, really well done. I think it's swell. Terja coming in with the opening tip. Been playing Welcome to the Game 2. Huh? Made me feel dumb. So I come to the stream and it is the monthly Feel Like an Even Dumber Luddite stream. Gonna sit and be entertained yet feel dumb. Oh, yeah. Well, some games make you feel dumb, and programming makes you feel dumb when you do it too. So we're all gonna be in the same boat over here. So the plan is to do our monthly programming stream here, which if you don't know, I have a YouTube channel called youtube.com/Quill18creates, where I do game programming tutorials in Unity, and that's supported by the lovely people over at patreon.com/Quill18creates. And once a month we take over the stream to do some programming stuff. So we're gonna start with that. We're working on this this multiplayer sort of tank shoot 'em up game, like that. We're gonna do that for an hour to 2 hours, depending on how my brain is working out. Programming is one of those things that's very like brain contextually sensitive. Yeah. So we're gonna do our best over here, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna switch over to Crusader Kings 2. By the way, this is not an actual edge. It's just a visual thing. We're gonna switch over to that and do, like, you know, Crusader Kings 2 for beginners. We're gonna do it vanilla without any DLC, because right now you can pick up Crusader Kings 2 100% off. It is free permanently if you pick it up on Steam right now. So there's a lot of new players. Someone is quoting the numbers of like concurrent players, and it's gone up like 100-fold right now, which is pretty exciting. Here, let's kill ourselves. Boom! Excellent. So yeah. Thump, thump, thump. Plum, plum, plum. Yeah, I know the tip messages are showing. They're a little bit embiggened and weird. And I was like, you know, maybe I should show the tip messages. I can't tell, but clearly the formatting is kind of wonky. So tell you what, I'm gonna get rid of the tip message for now until I make a decision as to how to format that so it doesn't look stupid and ugly. So there we go. So we won't see the messages on the next one. It's probably going to be okay. So we'll do that, and then we're going to try to squeeze in a little bit of multiplayer gaming, which we like to do on Saturdays. And we didn't do last weekend because we had Essential's amazing charity stream where you guys helped to raise something like $8,400 to save the bees. That's going to the Bumblebee Conservation Trust, which is based in Scotland. And when they found out what the heck happened, they got in touch with Ascension, like, hey, you guys should come and visit us and stuff, and we'll do things. So on Monday, I think Ascension and I are going to be heading out to Stirling to go and meet these guys, which is going to be kind of cool. So there'll be some pictures and stuff like that. So thank you again for all that. We got resubs. We got lots of resubs. The ND Coda coming in. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. All right. CK2 is DLC to death, no fun anymore. You know, like, I don't know, like, I don't personally have a problem with the Paradox DLC policy for these games. I feel like the games are still great in vanilla. It's one of those things, once you've encountered like a DLC, you're like, wow, I can't play the game without the DLC anymore. But it's like super playable even without it. And yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of it, but it does come on sale a whole ton. So let's get us going over here. $8,430.40 Canadian. Yeah, that's how much was raised in like just a day of live streaming, because you guys are amazing, and hopefully we can save the bumblebees, because without the bumblebees we'll be in trouble. Oh yeah, and if you play CK2 multiplayer, whatever DLC the host has gets shared with everyone as well, which is kind of nice. So if you have, if you know, one person has it and then all your friends get the free version, you can play together, and it's kind of awesome. I don't know. Anyway, enough of that. Is the Project Porcupine project fairly representative of how you normally architect games, i.e. in an MVC style? I have a programming background, but still end up sometimes feeling lost as the best way to organize, structure things in Unity. Wisecoder, that's an excellent question. Now, keep in mind that most of the, other than tutorials on the channel, most of the programming of games that I do is for game jams, where a lot of that gets thrown out of the window quite quickly because it's like desperate speed. And by the end of the 2-hour, the 48-hour, the 2-day, 48-hour programming marathon, the code is a horrible spaghetti mess, but it runs and gets it done. It takes a little bit more prep time to set up the MVC, but I think it's a huge win. And I'm pretty sure a lot of games, unless it's like a purely like sort of physical game where like the sort of the physical representation is the visual representation is the code representation, then I think a lot of things do use a fair amount of segregation between data and imagery. And I mean, back in the day, that was sort of just the way it was. Like, you'd have your array of enemies that would just keep track of their position and this and that, and then you'd have an entire different game loop that would loop through all the enemies and be like, okay, display a sprite here and here and here and here and here, and we do that every loop. So you get this implicit separation between the sort of model, which is the data side of it, and the view, which is, you know, the graphics side. And by default, you can muddle that up a fair bit in Unity, but you can also keep it fairly segregated, and I think that's a good idea. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba. So since I am in Scotland, let's have a little iron brew. Drink of champions. Do you have any experience with Godot? No, I don't. Nothing at all. Approaching a place where its feature level could match Unity and EU. No, I haven't looked at it at all. I'm very curious. Yeah, Korthos, I know what you're saying. Load up StarCraft 2 for the first time in 7 years. It just spammed me with achievements I retroactively earned for like 5 minutes. Yeah, I know what you're saying. And by the way, so we will probably try to squeeze in some StarCraft 2 for the multiplayer. If we get a good crowd of people, we'll just do some sort of insane free-for-all. If you only get a handful of people, then maybe we'll do like, you know, 3 versus 3 AI or something like that, which is what we did last time, which was a heck of a lot of fun. StarCraft 2 is free to play, free to download, free everything right now. So yeah, you can start that now. Okay. We're gonna start programming soon, I promise. But there's actually some excellent questions in chat. Do you have any plans to do any tutorial for Unreal 4 or the Unreal Engine? I don't have any plans. People ask me about that all the time, and maybe one day we can do a let's try the Unreal Engine together kind of stream, where we sort of fiddle with it and try to figure some things out. That might be kind of an interesting way to do things and look at things. You know what I mean? Something like that. Hey, Digital Madan. Edinburgh's dirty? I don't know. It's always seemed clean to me, but maybe, you know, different areas. I think Edinburgh's a lovely town. Would you do any ECS tutorials when it's final? I don't know what that is. Are you going to PDXCon 2018? That is certainly the plan. I gotta get in touch with them, because as of this moment now, I don't think any plane tickets have been booked or anything. But that's certainly the intention. So I'm gonna have to do some chit-chatting with some people, and just make sure everything's gonna be okay. Hey, Rabo. All right. So what I was hoping to do today is look at a turn-based thing, because the interesting thing is that I get questions all the time for turn-based games and how to do them. Because even though, like, from a point of view, it feels like, shouldn't turn-based be easier than real-time kind of, you know, active gameplay? But in fact, it's less intuitive because, I mean, in a real-time game, you sort of have a game loop that runs every frame, and like things get updated, right? Things just move, and you know, you can move as much as you want. How do you handle a turn-based game? And there needs to be a certain amount of logic in these sorts of things. So, and when you're talking about a game like a Scorched Earth or a Worms or Shell Shock, which is an excellent game, when you're talking about something like that, generally the way the game works is it is turn-based. It can be sequential turns, or it can be sort of simultaneous turns. And the turns tend to have 2 phases. There tends to be a period of time when you can move, and usually you can only move a limited amount of distance. So there's like, yeah, every turn you have a max move distance. And then after that, the movement phase is sort of done. At that point, everyone is in the shooting phase, so they can rotate their cannon. Again, there's nothing stopping us here from having like multiple different ways of controlling the way the cannon shoots. Internally, there's an angle variable and there's a power variable. And right now, just because it was the easiest way to do it, we have Q and E controlling the turret angle, and we have S and W controlling the power, which you can see over here. But you could have an actual dashboard where you could type stuff in for exact numbers. Isn't a real-time game not also just turn-based with very fast turns? In a sense, Osiris, that's actually a great way to think about it. But the difference being, in a turn-based game, you're decoupling some of the game logic from the graphics loop, because a lot of times the sort of loop that's responsible for upgrading the user interface, responding to clicks, like there might be animations playing, and you want to do stuff. There are going to be buttons and things that you can do, like turning the turret, that obviously has to respond in real time. And so you have this completely different logical loop, effectively, for the turn logic. So you'd have to basically add this extra thing on there that's not built into the game engine itself, especially. You have to really implement it on your own. But yeah, so I was saying with this, there's no reason you can't do something else. There's no reason you couldn't have all of these different ways to put in these angles and these powers, right? Shell Shocked has a nice one where it's got this like cool sort of arc graphic and sort of like this cone graphic, and you can click, and as you move your mouse around, the cone just like tracks to wherever the mouse is pointing, and you can move the mouse closer or further away for more power or something like that. But what it's doing is adjusting those same two numbers. It's doing, nothing else that's special. So we're just going to leave this for now because, the question of what the user interface should be like is sort of moot. We've got something in there that's going to work. Will there be water in the map? This interesting things. One of the things we talked about is possibly the idea of looking at that sort of classic sort of tank combat landscape, right? Where the explosions actually take out sort of pixels in the terrain that then causes some of the terrain to collapse and maybe the tank to collapse. Right now, there's nothing of that. There's actually no ground at all. Well, there is a ground with a collision box for the bullets, because the bullets can hit the ground here. But that's it. But in fact, with our tanks, the tanks just move sideways. There's no gravity effect whatsoever. All right, so let's talk about the turn logic here. Just checking to see if there's any other questions that we may want to respond to. Using a third-party library for the missile vectoring, a Unity one, or did you write it? Just for this one, I believe the missiles are just physics objects, so they just use the Unity physics, the 2D physics there. Although we could have written it ourselves. The thing is, 2D physics is dead simple, right? To actually do. But yeah, we use that for now, and we might end up, rewriting it for different weapons. Might not be sort of your typical physical projectiles in a million different ways, and so we might end up doing some other stuff there. But for now, it's just like we just give it an additional velocity and boom, done. Unity is free as long as you have a turnover less than 100,000. Yeah, even if you've got over that, it's still sort of free to use. The publishing, and basically it is free to publish your games in Unity. The free version has very few restrictions. It will enforce a made with Unity personal edition logo when you open it, and that's about it. If you do have a company that's worth more, that has over $100,000 in revenue, then I believe you're not allowed to publish a game with the free version, although there's nothing stopping you from still fiddling with it and stuff like that. So yeah, it's pretty nice to work with. Thanks, Tribble. Appreciate it. The ECS system is the new entity component system. What, in Unity? No, I haven't been following that, so I don't know. I haven't used Unity's new tile map system. I tried it way back when it was still in the beta, and it was like, oh, this is interesting, but it was super glitchy, and I haven't had a chance to play it with it since. So let's open up some game code right now. Now, we do currently have this game manager object in the game over here, and it's got a script on it called game manager. So we're going to open that up. And now, Visual Studio is now the de facto editor that comes with Unity. So we're finally making the change there. People would always ask me why I use MonoDevelop, and the reason is because it's the thing that came with Unity by default, and it was the best thing to do with tutorials, because then people wouldn't have to change and customize anything. But now this is the default, so I'm switching over to it. Now, it's been a long time since I've spent any real time inside of Visual Studio, so hotkeys and everything like that. I have no clue what they're going to be anymore, but we'll see what we can do. Hey, Wake! Coding for fun is a hobby, and it's grid-based. Ran into problems with objects that cover more than one tile, like 2.3 game objects. Any idea how many tiles? No, the same object covers more tiles than one. Yeah, Wake, this is a really common issue. So what Wake is asking with his contribution to the Whiskey and Chocolate Fund and Iron Brew Fund, so thank you very much, is if you have a tile-based game and an object covers more than one tile, how do you implement that? And there's a bunch of different things, but probably, so usually tiles, okay, so there's a bunch of different implementations, right? Depends, can you have more than one object in a tile, yada, 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 yada. So you might have, if tiles are aware of objects that are in them, it's usually that each tile will still point to that object. So your 6 different tiles for 2x3, for example, will all be like, which object is in me, and I'm pointing to the same object. That way, if something, say, hits a tile and it's supposed to damage the object, then they can link back to that object, and that's fine. Meanwhile, in the object, most objects know what tile they're in, so they have a pointer to that tile. Either you make that pointer to a tile actually be an array, you know, a list of, I'm actually in these tiles, although that's probably less typical. What's probably more typical is for the object to say, I am in this tile, where the tile that it's in is like the top left corner. And then if the object is also aware of its size, then it's very easy at that point to say, well, give me a list of all the tiles I'm in case you need something for that. For example, if you're placing down that object, and that object does some sort of validation to make sure, am I actually allowed to enter this tile? Then it can loop through each of those tiles that it contains, that it would step on and be like, okay, yes, they're all empty, so that's fine. So it doesn't actually have to store all tiles, just say the top left corner and like the height and width, and that's fine. And then you got to make sure that whatever logic is in when an object gets destroyed or an object moves, it's got to make sure to remove itself from all the old tiles and place itself on all the new ones. But other than that, there's not that much to it. It's one of those things where the problem turns out to be like, oh, that's not so bad. I thought it was going to be brutal, but it's not so bad. So hopefully that answers your question. It's a very good one, and certainly something that's like not super intuitive. I've had to deal with that stuff a lot, and then it's like, oh, there's a bunch of other things that get kind of weird. Like a lot of other code logic has to be adjusted to be a little bit more aware of multi-object tiles. And from a user interface point of view, if you're like placing a tile attached to a mouse, it's like, should the object be centered on the mouse? Should the object be in like the top left corner? You know, but you know, that's just something for playability. Feel I should get a kickback for all the Paradox games. That's okay. You guys watch my videos, and that's pretty good for me. Okay, let's talk about the game logic over here. We have this sort of like dummy kind of a game loop in here for our kind of real-timey interpretation or implementation of the game. It's like, oh, we'll give people 3 minutes to beat each other up, and then when the time runs out, we would restart the match or something, which actually isn't implemented, but that was the idea. We had some sort of time left over here. But I think instead what we're going to do is we're going to implement the sort of turn-based logic. And let's consider what the turn-based logic is. Again, in these sort of tank shooting games, you tend to have the phase where you can move, the phase where you can sort of plan your shot and lock in your shot, and then there's the resolution phase where it plays out all the shots, deals with all the damage, kills people off, awards points, that sort of thing. So and then usually you just start the next round at that point, like the next turn at that point, with whoever's still alive gets to start moving and then shooting and so on and so forth. So really, to me, there are 3 phases in most of these games. The difference, one of the questions you have to answer or ask yourself is, do all the players move simultaneously, or is it one player at a time? And I'm a big fan of the simultaneous move. I think that's a lot more fun in these games because you don't necessarily, usually you sort of, during the movement phase, movement is in real time. So everyone can sort of move together, and then it locks in, and then everyone sort of picks their shot, but you don't really necessarily know who everyone is shooting at. Although probably like any change in the turret angle gets updated in real time, so you can be like, hey, that guy's gonna shoot me. Okay, well I'm gonna shoot him too, or something of that nature. And then everyone locks in, and when everyone has locked in their move, then it moves on to the next stage, and you can do a timed thing as well. So when the timer counts down, it forces everything to the next stage. I like that, but you can also do the one player at a time sort of thing, or one team at a time. Sometimes they'll be like, okay, team red, all of you guys can move and do your shot. Now, team blue, all of you do it back. I think, like, for simplicity, we might do fully simultaneous here, but the technique that we're going to apply here could apply to other things. So, We might still want a time left because we might give people like 5 seconds to move, 5 seconds to shoot or something like that, although the times might differ. But I can sort of see us still having some sort of timer for like, okay, you've got this long to finish, otherwise we're going to move on. I'm going to suggest that we use, apparently, caps lock, an enum to keep track of the turn state, okay? Turn state. The idea being... So we ran into this last time I did a tutorial. We were doing it like it was the board game one, and we did have multiple states in a turn, and we were using a series of booleans for it. And I said then like an enum would be better, but I was trying to keep the actual code concepts a little smaller. Here we'll use an enum instead, and I always f up the syntax of this like 30 times before I actually like type it right, because different languages have different enum syntax. So, you know, I apologize in advance for that. An enum, I guess it's like an enumerator or enumerable kind of thing. It's basically the same as like, so state 0 is when we move, state 1 is when we shoot, state 2 is during resolution, and we loop back to 0, except you name those in actual code. But back in my day, I would just use defines to define these states, but you know, that's stupid. So move, shoot, resolve. There's our 3 game states over there. And then we're gonna have a variable that keeps track of our turn state. And it's actually gonna be a property with a public get and a protected set or something like that. So only we get to change, only the game manager gets to change the state. What am I getting wrong here with my semicolons? What's the compilation button over here? Oh, do you not like, right. You don't like the duplication there because it's within the same class. If this were a property or a field that was the same name as a class and was an instance of it, that would be okay. But here you're kind of unhappy. I guess this is pretty common. I don't know. There's probably some other way to do that. But if we do that, then you're a little happier. Good. What am I effing up here? Oh, and I forgot to say, you are public. There we go. And, oh, you are also public. There we go. And then I don't need the semicolon. Excellent. So we're defining this is the definition of this enum. So we're creating a new type of variable. Just like we have integers, just like we have floats. Well, now we have a new type of variable, new keyword for, no, new type. Anyway, called turn state. And then we made a variable, an instance of that called turn state this way. Boom. Couldn't it just be static? Well, it could be. That doesn't make a difference here. We'd still use an enum for it. It could be static, which means it would be a unique state. In theory, what if your program was some sort of central server or something like that and could have multiple instances of Game Manager, right? That's not what's going to happen in this case, but in theory, you could have multiple instances of Game Manager, in which case the statics would be shared by every instance of the same class, so they'd overwrite each other. By having it be an actual sort of property or field that's instantiated, an instance value in here, then each Game Manager can have its own version of turn state. It's not going to come up, but yeah. Put enum in its own file. I like the idea of like this being something that belongs to Game Manager. You could have turn state be a variable type that's, you know, referenced in a million different areas, but really this turn state here is specifically a factor, an element of Game Manager. So people can refer to Game Manager, not turn state, but it's not really going to come up. Anyway, philosophical stuff. Vim or Emacs? Now we're really starting some crap there. Vim for sure. Hey, how come the latest tip didn't stay on the screen? Did I break it? Delta Mike Oscar, I don't know why your thing's not on the screen. Cheers, any plans of doing a Let's Play of Frostpunk when it comes out this month? Beyond excited for that one. No plans, but lots of hope. So, let's hope. Ba-da-da-da-da. Twitch chat starting crap? Nah. It's like one of the key holy wars. That and like tabs versus spaces. I used to be very pro tabs, like aggressively so, but because of a couple of specific things, I'm like, no, spaces is the way. And the fact, like, if you had a dumb editor that couldn't, like, you know, figure out indent levels automagically, despite the fact that these are all spaces, I'd be like, no, I have to use tabs. But because editors are smart enough, spaces solve a couple of cases in multi-user projects that, like, oh, no, yeah, okay, it's better to go with just that. I know. It's like, it's a thing. One of the nice things about using tabs is people can customize the editors to use different, like sort of effective indentation levels. But yeah. After working on enough, like, multi-user projects, it's like, turns out, no, spaces has got to be the way. Doesn't matter at all if you're solo. But in multi-user projects, that's what it was. It was like, oh, yeah, no, there are problems. Anyway, so we've got this sort of turn state. I think we'll probably also want to have some sort of, like, turn counter. Integer turn number. Sounds good. And again, we'll have it be protected set over here. I mean, there's other ways that you can, like, manage this sort of thing, but this is very handy. So only game manager itself can tune turn number, but everyone else can gain access to it. So that's very handy. So we'll keep track of that. I think what we'll do is we'll have some sort of function void start new match. Okay, this is how we start a match. What it does is it sets turn number to, I'm gonna say 1. Obviously, like, you know, indexes and stuff like that start at 0 in programming, but this is sort of a displayed thing. You start on turn 1 and so on and so forth, and I think that's gonna be fine. There'll probably be some other things that change as well. Probably we'll have something like start new turn as well. And what its job is gonna be is to go turn number ++, and turn state is going to be set to turn state.move, which is the first state over here. And then at the start of a new match, we probably go start new turn, like that. Although what we might do is something like to do show new match flare, like title screen, and only when complete, start new turn, right? So the idea is like, round 1, fight, or, you know, match, red versus blue, blah, da, 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 da. That goes away, and then the new turn starts, and you can implement that through, you know, having a countdown timer or using a coroutine or something like this. This actually be a pretty good use case for a coroutine. I'm generally anti-coroutine, because I tend to feel like they lead to slightly confusing code, because of, like, execution order questions. They're always bad if you're using them to, like, hide a big computation, which would be better done as a separate thread, which you can use multi-threading in Unity, as long with a variety of caveats, but it is possible. So yeah, anyway. Oh yeah, you will start at turn 2. You're right. There you go. So do this, increment to turn 1. Thank you very much. Good catch. We would have seen that pretty fast. Oh, thanks for the follow. What about the camel case? Oh, you guys talking about different ways to format variables and stuff. Yeah, this is one of those things I've gone a million different ways for. Ultimately, the variable sort of style I use here, even the brace style, because I've always been a fan of this brace style for nesting. And actually, you can see, like, the default template for Unity always uses that as well. But, and I like it because it tends to compact the code vertically a little bit more, so you can see more code at once, which I tend to feel is good. But I believe the sort of Microsoft recommended sort of standard style for C# uses this, and we were doing with Project Porcupine and stuff. We had to pick a style for this, and it was like, well, we've got to settle on something, and this is, you know, in theory, the standard C# one, so that's what we'll do. And in terms of a case over here, yeah, a camel case, as opposed to, like, underscores. I used to, most of my web program days, it was the underscore style, but camel case is the thing now. Is there a reason you're using a start turn instead of an end turn call? Well, just conceptually right now, we're looking to start a new turn here. In fact, what we might have is we might actually separate out some end turn and new turn logic for a variety of different reasons. But now, yeah, this is going to be fine. Conceptually, another way, like an end of turn is the same. Camel case not to be mixed with Pascal case. Yeah, there's that too. More font size? Okay, I did boost the font size. But yeah, maybe more. I think it's still maybe a little smaller than we were using before. Let me up to like an 18 over here and begin it a little bit more. Different fonts might be slightly easier to see as well. Okay, so we've got this logic. So during the update, there's like all of a sudden a lot less to do, right? We do have this time left, so I guess we might want to have some sort of thing to differentiate how much time you get between phases. Here on a new turn, we'll set time left to here. You've got 10 seconds every phase, every state to process your time. So we'll still shrink this, and then this is not restart the match. Instead, this is advance the game phase. So what we actually want to do is something like, if time left is less than or equal to 0, or I don't know where the pipe symbol is on this keyboard. There it is. Wow. It's a British keyboard layout, I think. International English keyboard, something like that. So everything's in like a weird, different location. So, or something like, all players have locked in this phase. We're going to call this something else, but it's like, this is sort of the idea, is some sort of check. Have all the players like said, yeah, I'm done. They've all used all their movement up or hit the space bar or whatever it is to lock in their movement or their shooting, then we can advance. Either way, we advance the game phase. So we do that. So advance turn phase, not game phase. Now, there's a lot of different ways we could simply advance this. I think what we're going to want to do is probably, at this point, actually use like a set of ifs to check on some of the state here. Although we could use delegates to operate this sort of state machine, which is kind of the situation that we're in. I don't think we've got enough states to really worry about that. So what we're going to do, I will put a note. We could do various delegate functions to avoid having to do if checks here. Actually, we're not even going to use if checks. We're going to use a switch statement. That's okay. So we'll have a switch based on the current turn state. Be nice if this like would autocomplete based on the enum options. There probably is a freaking key for that. I just don't know what they are. But I bet you there is something like that. Anyway. By the way, this is another syntax that I always sort of goof up. Because, like, I've programmed, like, 15 different languages over the years. And, like, at a certain point, you sort of stop caring about, like, memorizing the syntax. And you're like, we'll just figure it out. Is it not? Is it not this in C#? Man, I don't know. C#, switch case. Yeah, it is. Why am I getting... Oh! The red underlines went away. Am I crazy? Was there not just red underlines over here to tell me that my syntax is wrong? Oh, was it wrong before I filled in some stuff? Okay. So I was right. It was just... probably if I moused over that, I'd be like, you need a break. Okay. Good. I think the break is not optional in C#, which is almost certainly for the best. So... turn state dot shoot case turn state dot resolve. Boom. Well, maybe you can cascade through, but you still need to end with something. And then we can do a default, right? That's a thing. And then you like freak out. It's like we'd throw an exception or something, but we'll just do debug.log error. This should never happen. So if you see that in your log, you just double click on it and it'll bring you over here and you'll be like, right, I like forgot to put in an extra case statement for a turn state. Unknown turn state. So it means we defined a new turn state and somehow we went from one to the other, but we forgot a case over here. Bam. Need either break or return. No dark mode. I know, like I usually actually like that. There's ways to tune this, but I haven't tuned this up yet, so we'll see how it goes. Okay. So at this point, move phase is done. What does that mean? Well, mostly, right now, it's just going to mean we set turn state to be equal to turn state dot shoot. Boom, done. I think we'll like space these out a bit. And then the same thing is going to be true here. Turn state is going to be equal to turn state dot resolve, but almost certainly more things are going to happen. And then if the resolve state is over for some reason, which right now is also on a timer, which may not make much sense. Oh yeah, we'll set time left back to here, 10 seconds. Here, time left is like moot. We're going to force it to 0 because we actually need some other sort of logic over here. If turn state is not equal to turn state dot resolve, and so we only check the time oh my god, that doesn't work in this. In a lot of editors I use, if you highlight text and hit parentheses, it just wraps the text in the parentheses. I'm sure there's a way to do that in Visual Studio, but I don't know what it is. It's like, or, where's the pipe symbol? Or resolve phase is completed. And we might want to, you know, do this check as a delegate or something like that, because this if statement is going to get a bit wonky, but we're doing something like this. Advance turn phase. Undeveloped does that, I know. There's got to be a way to do it in Visual Studio. Have Quill talking about playing World of Warships? Huh? Yeah, logging of errors is good. Like in a release game, what you would do is you'd probably, like the various logs for different levels would probably still get saved out to one or multiple different text files, with the idea being if there's a crash, send the log file to developers, which might be something automatic. You get a pop-up, uh-oh, something horrible just happened. Click here to send this the error log to the devs, and then they see these like sort of errors come up and they're like, oh, and this would probably include more sort of dump information of some way, so that devs can try to figure out, how did we get here? Good name. This is not beer I'm drinking. This is Iron Brew, the drink of Scottish champions. It is orange. Not orange flavored. It's just orange. All right, so then when we get here and this has been resolved, we go to something like, this is now the start new turn, for whatever that means. Almost certainly there's going to be some more stuff here. In fact, if these lines get too big, what I'll probably do is put them to some sort of function, at which point the delegates start being a lot more attractive again. But let's go with something like that. Okay, so now we have some ability. The turns will progress forward, and that's going to be okay. So we're going to put in something like debug.log. We can say something like new phase started. Boom. And the nice thing about enums is that it will output them in a string type format like this. I don't think you need to do a toString. I think the toString is implied and automated, but we'll go and put it explicit anyway. So now we'll have a nice debug log there, and over here we'll do something like debug.log starting turn plus turn number, like this. All right, so we've got that sort of logic. Now what we have to do is we have to get the players to actually respect this logic, because internally this is going to happen, right? If we go and find Unity and I hit play, I mean, assuming I haven't, ruined everything. What would be a good idea is to call start new match like that. There we go, starting turn 1. And then if we wait 10 seconds, which you can actually see the countdown timer over here, it should go to the next phase, which is to change us from movement to shooting, which is happening. New phase started, shoot. But of course I can still move, I can still shoot, I can do everything at once because our player doesn't give a toss as to what's what. Need dark theme, screen too bright. I know it is really bright, and I don't like to program with the bright white screen. I find it too hard on the eyes, but we'll deal with that for the next one. So we need to get the player to actually respect this stuff. So our actual player is handled with the player code. Well, there's the tank logic, which is here. Now, this tank function is mostly here to synchronize the tanks over the network. Well, I say that, I'm lying. I am lying to you. The player class actually represents the connected player. And it does get attached to an empty game object, but otherwise it doesn't exist physically in the game. It doesn't need to know anything. So it is, in fact, the tank logic over here. So in the tank logic here, there is, there's an update function, of course, which runs, okay? And in the update function, there's some stuff we might do if we're the server. And there's other stuff we might do if we have authority over the object. Having authority over the object means that it's my object, right? This is my personal tank. There may be many tanks in the game, one of which, in theory one, but could be multiple for whatever reason, but in theory one tank is mine. The other tanks belong to other players. So if I have authority over this object, what I will do is I will go ahead and call authority update. And authority update over here is gonna handle reading movement input and shooting and do something different. So this is where we're actually gonna listen to what's happening on the keyboard and have something happen, okay? And then if we don't have authority, then what we're doing here is we're simply updating the position of this tank based on the last network update. We got a network update that says that such and such a tank should be here. Okay, it's no longer here, it's now here. Well, in this has authority equals false, what we do is very smoothly slide the tank from here to there. That's it, that's all. So we, in the authority update, is really the only place where we have to check, hey, am I actually allowed to make such and such a move? What phase are we in? And therefore do this. Now, we might want to do some of those checkings on the server side as well. But for now, what we're going to do in the update movement and update shooting, what we can do is just wrap this around something. Do we have access to the game manager? I don't think we do. No, and it looks like something we need. So we need a reference to the game manager. This is the game. This is the thing that controls everything, and it's sort of kind of the global object, but not really. I mean, a lot of things will reference the game manager, but it's not the same as just having globals in another way, because this is just the way that various objects talk to the core game logic and says, hey, I need to change something about the game. So we're just going to go ahead and when this object, this tank gets started, so before the very first update, what it's going to do is going to say, hey, find object of type game manager. Now, if you've got a sneeze like me, excuse me, it's nice to know that I don't just sneeze at home. I always thought like, oh, is there something about my recording room at home? Is it too dusty? Is there something in the air that's making me sneeze? No, apparently just streaming and recording makes me sneeze for some reason. It might be the big bright light. Some people sneeze when they look at the sun. I don't really get that, but maybe there's something going on with the lights that I have while I'm streaming. Okay, if we have more than one game manager instantiated, then this might lead to, you know, some sort of weirdness or whatever. Then we need some other system for finding the correct game manager for our game. Most likely what would happen is when we instantiate a tank, like the game manager is responsible for spawning the tank for us. And then what would happen is when the game manager spawned the tank, the game manager would also say, and by the way, this is the correct game manager for you. But that's not the case here. So we'll just go ahead and grab that, and that's okay. So now we have a reference to the game manager, which means over here, what we can do is something like if game manager dot turn state is not equal to move, then we return. If we're not in the state where we're allowed to move, we just bail out of this. Now, what's negative about this is at this point, it means the tank needs to have some inner knowledge about the game manager. And in fact, here's an interesting situation. Right now, if we're working with synchronous turns, everyone takes their move at the same time and everyone does their shoot phase at the same time, this works okay. But what happens when we decide, oh, we'd actually like to implement the option for sequential turns where player 1 moves, then 2, then 3, then 4. Well, you could be in player 4's move state, but player 1 is checking, hey, are we in a move state? Oh, we are? So I'm allowed to move? Okay. So then all of a sudden we're adding extra code of like, oh, and whose turn is it and whatever. So what I think we're going to do is in Game Manager, we're actually going to put in some little helper functions. So this is going to be public. And actually, I like to have my publics above my protected functions. But after the update, I kind of like to have the start function, basically the constructor. Then I like to have all my various like variables and stuff. Then I like to have my update because it's quite common, and then my publics. So here I'm going to have a public. It's going to return a Boolean for tank can move. And what it's going to do, it's going to take a tank, and it's going to return true or false if this tank can move. Now, that means... Oh, you're complaining because not everything returns a thing. That's okay. That means the game manager can then do things like, well, I know whose player's turn it properly is and different things like that, which is all stuff the game manager is responsible for, and it can take care of this. For now, all it's going to do is it's going to return if turn state, if turn state is equal to turn state.move, this will return true. So we actually don't even care what tank gets passed here right now. If the turn state is equal to move, then we say, yeah, you're allowed to move. And some people are asking about cheating, and you're absolutely right. We'll be taking a look at that in a scooch. Things, where am I? Tank, okay, we actually don't need the player, and we don't need health. So we're gonna go back over to tank over here. So instead of this, we're going to tweak it instead to say game manager dot tank can move this. Hey, can this tank move? Yeah? Or, sorry. So if this is equal to false, and again, we could put the exclamation mark here, but I like to be like super clear, right? Because you might miss the little exclamation mark, but a big ass false, okay? If tank can move is equal to false, then we're not allowed to move, so we'll return. Otherwise, we're doing some keyboard input stuff. And then we'll do the same thing over here for tank can shoot. Actually, instead of shoot, I think we should call this phase aim. People really want the dark theme. Okay. I believe they said it was tools, options... Someone said it earlier. It wouldn't be just a change here. Someone really wants the theme changed. Color theme. Dark. You're welcome. Oh, change my font size. We have to embiggen the font. It's too small. Font and colors. We're going to go back to an 18 font size. Thump. All right. I'm not actually a fan of Consoles. It feels like it's too tall. I like another font that's a little bit more compact, but there we go. We can all save our eyes. Excellent. And I should probably move my head because there's going to be a chance sometimes I'm going to be covering the code. So let's do that. Also, I realize the green screen is like a little bit wonky, but that's okay. That's not what I want. I want this. Excellent. Okay. I can see clearly now. The bright theme is gone. Where's the Oh, there we go. All right. Right. So, someone knows the refactor command for this? Because in mono develop, it'd be F2. Oh, it's still F2. Excellent. So we're going to name shoot to aim. There we go. And so I will rename this as well to can aim. Boom. Done. Excellent. All right. And we'll put in a little check over here. Tank can aim. Boom. All right, so then we bail out. Now, this is only changing things on the user side of things, right? Because what's happening here is this is only running on the update thing, the authority side, which is to say the player that owns the tank. In theory, someone could hack their client to remove this check so that they can still freely move even when they're not supposed to. Now, right now, the only time we actually tell the network, like the only thing that actually makes any changes at all on the server or whatever, is this command update position. This is when we actually say, hey, this object is moving. And we've got a big to-do here to make sure, hey, is the move legal in terms of landscape and movement remaining? And finally, and most importantly, the phase, the turn phase. Are we in a legal turn phase to do this? What we might want to do as well is add a little delay between phase changes, because in theory, the server may have like cut off the like phase time a microsecond before we got like the movement command in or something like that. I don't think it's a really big deal though, because it's only going to be a few milliseconds here or there, but we might want to do something like that where we have a slight grace period before the next phase starts just to finish things off. There might be something else. But this is where we do something like, for example, if tank can... Oh, if game manager... Now, command update position, this is running on the server. We're now on the server. So now we say something like game manager dot tank can move this equals false according to the server, this tank should not be allowed to move right now. Do something. But what we're going to do is just like ignore. Just like everything else about the legality of the move, we're not actually doing anything about it to revert right now, but this is how you would do it. And you do the same thing. Oh, we got the fixed position over here. That's true. We like don't call it right now, but you know, we could do something like this. So there's plenty of ways. We got examples for how to do it. Same thing with like the turret angle change and like locking in the power. We do some checks for that. Okay, but for now, that's in theory going to be good. Sort of skeleton placeholder stuff. Okay, so back to the tank code over here. So we now are at the point where we won't move if it's not in the right phase, and we won't shoot if it's not in the right phase. This is not entirely accurate. Yeah, it is actually, because yeah, we just skipped this. So update shooting is responsible for updating the angle of the turret. updating the power of our shot, as well as detecting to see if we've hit the spacebar, which right now the spacebar tells the tank to shoot right away. But this actually needs a change. Instead of shooting the instead of shooting the bullet when we hit space, what it should do is actually signal to the server, hey, we've locked in. Because the shooting only happens during the resolve phase. Our 3 phases, I'd misnamed them before, are move, aim, and then resolve. Resolve is when the bullets actually start flying. So space should simply set some sort of tag of, yeah, we're good right now. We've locked in. So what we should probably do over our tank, we have, so commands run on the server. RPCs run on the client. So we want some sort of client tag. Well, we want a couple of things. We want a client RPC that is something like new RPC new turn. New turn has just started. And what we can imagine, I'm sure there's a better way to navigate these files in here and quickly jump around, is we're going to have some sort of value, which actually might be a sync var. I don't know if we need it to be a sync var. But we're going to have some sort of Boolean, which is tank has locked in phase. Tank is locked in is going to be fine. And we want to set to true when we're like good with our turn. When we've either used up all our movement or we've hit spacebar to lock in our movement, and or when we've like figured out our aim and decided our power, and then again we hit spacebar to tell the server, yeah, we're good. Because when everyone has locked in, that's when the turn advances, or when the time just runs out. That's going to be fine. So the question is, does it have to be a sync var? Do the other clients need to know when you have locked in? Maybe, maybe not. Let's say no right now. Just we'll keep things simple. We can always change it later on. There's just this value that can be set to true or false. And really, it doesn't matter what the clients think this value is. It just, the server ultimately needs to know. So at some point, we're going to have 2 things. On RPC new turn, the client, right? You know, maybe we will set it to a sync var. Doesn't actually matter. It really doesn't matter. No, let me not do this. I'm just trying to think of the best way to like present it to people. We don't need to spell it out. What is it? Locked in, tank is locked in and set to false. Actually, this should happen every time there's a new phase. So this is a message. This gets spammed whenever a new phase has started. And what we probably want to do is let all the tanks know that, hey, a new phase has started regardless. I like that. So over here, we have a start new phase. Well, advanced new phase is what it is. Let's tell all of the tanks that a new phase has started. So this is in Game Manager. But we can do something is like tanks is equal to game object dot find objects of type tank, and we get an array. So we now have an array of tanks, and so for each one we can do something like for each tanks tank in tanks. Kind of funny to say. dot. And this will need to be public. Now keep in mind, this function here, advanced turn phase, this is only going to ever run on the server. So we are the server at this point, which means we're allowed to call RPCs and say, hey, by the way, we're starting a new phase over here. Boom. So this will get executed on each person's individual computer for each tank, and they get set this way. And that's fine. Really, we don't necessarily need to spam them about every tank. There might be a more efficient way of doing this. In fact, almost certainly, we could just call an RPC on the game manager itself so that only each client's game manager object gets the signal of this, and then but what if you can have more than one player on a computer? Then maybe you'll have multiple local tanks. Yeah, this is fine. This might be overkill, but it also covers a few interesting use cases. Sorry, I'm whining a bit. Not whining, blabbering on about stuff. Okay, so we have just been told by the server that a new phase has started, so we can reset our tank as locked in to false. So now what we're doing is we're making another set of changes over here. Something like on our movement, if we've already locked in, right? Undo. If we've already, that was weird. If tank is locked in is equal to true, again, I like being extra verbose in these tutorials. If tank is locked in is equal to true, or we're not allowed to move, then we can just return. So we may have already locked in our movement. So we'll check for that first. Oh my God, I do not like this selection. I can't select just the space? Maybe it automatically adds in the space? It does automatically add in the space. I don't like that selection cursor thing. That was weird. So same thing over here. So now, how do we actually lock in? Well, when you hit the space bar, that's how we actually lock in our move. So now, instead of shooting when we hit space, because remember, the authority update shooting should actually be called authority update aiming. Okay, this is when we're aiming. When we hit space, it means we've locked in our shot. So all of this code over here. Oh my God, there's gotta be a hotkey to comment to block. Chat, save me. Save me before I go insane. There's gotta be a hotkey to comment out a block of code. Control K, Control C? Do not like. And Control K, Control U is uncomment. So if I go Control K and Control C again, that's awful. Why isn't it just a toggle? Yeah, they love the corded key maps. I'm seeing that. That is so bonkers. I just like being able to, in monodevelop, being able to Control slash and comment to block and Control slash to uncomment to block was awesome. Damn it. All right. Anyway, just comment it out for now so we can remember it, because we're going to need this code in a second. But really, all that happens here when we get here is we are going to lock in our moves. Now, we can't just set tank is locked in to be equal to true. We can't just do this because the server doesn't know about it yet. We have to tell the server that we are locked in. So what we want to do is we want to create a new server command that says void command lock in. So this is now running on the server. So the server will set its tank has locked in to be equal to true. Done. Now, and if we run it here, so there. Lock in our shot. And let the server know. So now both the client and the server have tank has locked in set to true. At no point do we let the other clients know. We might want to Like, we might turn this into a sync var for a million different reasons so that the other clients can know each player who has logged in, but we don't have to do that. Whether or not it's a sync var doesn't actually matter at this point. So we'll do this. Now, if we did set it as a sync var, we don't have to set it manually because it'll happen and blah, 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 blah. Can you remind us what magic sync var, command, and client RPC do? That's an excellent thing, an excellent question. Thank you. So command is simply a function that will run on the server. This command tag over here is some syntactic magic that will get added around this function when this gets compiled into a game. That just makes it so that this function here, when you call command lock-in, it only gets executed on the server itself. So if you're running from a client, what this actually does is it sends a message to the server to tell the server, hey, run this function on this object. And it passes the object ID information, things like that. It needs to have a network ID, yada, yada, yada. So it says, hey, on object with network ID 1115, run the command lock-in, and then it will do that. The RPC client is the same way, but it gets called on the server and tells the clients to execute this. Now, sometimes one particular executable is both acting as the server and the client, in which case it'll be getting both these messages in different contexts. Okay. So where were we? I guess we were here. So that's done. Excellent. So now once we've shot, it won't let us shoot again. Now, we want exactly the same code in the movement phase over here. Instead of moving... no, we do move in real time. If we're allowed to move, we move in real time. That's fine. But then at some point... Oh my god, did that ever F up all of the syntax by pasting that in? Look how much that broke the formatting. By pasting that in without the closing curly brace. Ugh. I'll get used to working in this. Every editor has quirks and ways to like best operate. Wow. Anyway, lock in our movement. So the same thing happens. If we're in the movement here phase and we hit space, then we've locked that in. So let's give a quick little test. Control K, Control D to reformat. Thank you. Although I don't know what I have the formatting rules set to, so I don't know what the default syntax will be. So right now I can move, but I cannot aim or shoot. There's also a countdown timer. If I hit space, I can no longer move because I'm locked in. Now when the countdown timer goes, it's now a new phase. We're now in the aim phase. I can't move, but I can aim and change the shot power. If I hit space, I'll also lock in, and now I can't do any of that. And then the timer runs down and goes to the resolve phase, and then it gets confused because we haven't actually implemented a resolve phase to actually get the shot off, but that's okay. So that's good. What we should probably do is have the server be aware, or have the ability to check, hey, has everyone locked in? Because right now it only advances the next phase when the 10-second timer runs out. But the whole reason to have the lock-in is for the server to be able to say, has everyone finished locking in? In which case, let's move on. So all players have locked in this phase. You know what? That's a great function name, and no one can tell me otherwise. So this is in Game Manager. This is the update function for Game Manager. We check to make sure we're a server. If we're not the server, then we just bail out. Because remember, everyone on their computer has an instance of a Game Manager, but only the one running on the server do we actually want to have running this game logic over here. Otherwise, nothing makes any sense. So on the server, it's going to have an extra check here for all players have locked in this phase. So we're going to have a little check here. Void, all players have locked in this phase. Boom, like that. No language is best. It's absolutely true. Occasionally there's a language that might be slightly more convenient for a particular type of task. Especially the sort of compiled versus interpreted kind of thing. There's advantages to both in different scenarios. A lot of times it mostly comes down to what kind of various libraries are available. As long as language is true and complete, you can basically do it all. Of course, then you've got things like defunge or whatever. Drink of choice today is Iron Brew because I'm in Scotland. At least until we've done the programming, at which point the drink of choice will become something else, maybe. We'll see. All right, where was it? Oh, all players are locked in this phase. So this is a Boolean. Now, Booleans you should really name with something like is or something like that. Or in this case, you might have a plural like have. Because I like to use it as a check. So instead of, like, usually it's like is game paused or something like that. In this case, I think something like have all players locked in. I mean, all players have locked in, but I really like to start with the question. It makes it really explicit this is a Boolean. What do we call this function? Naming functions and off by one errors are the hardest things in programming or something like that. Is phase locked? I love it. Is phase locked? Thank you. Perfect. All players are... So is phase locked? So the idea with this... Where are you highlighted? Oh, because nothing, everything. Okay. Check to see if all tanks have locked in their phase moves. Boom. Done. We'll assume that we can return true. Then what we're going to do is we're going to loop through all the tanks. Now, find objects of type isn't actually slow, but it's not necessarily speedy. So ideally, we don't want to run this every frame. And is phase locked actually does have to be checked every frame to see if we can progress forward. Now, the question I have is, are we actually safe to just grab all the tanks and keep them around? And I'm not sure that we can, because the problem is, when a tank gets blown up, really we can just remove the tank object completely. And maybe there's weird things, like players can join mid-game or something like that. So it feels like we might have to, like, find this list every frame. Probably the real answer is to use, like, a static list for tanks to register and unregister themselves. That would be faster for optimization. We will go ahead and just do this for now. So I'm going to grab this and do this. But I'm going to put in a to-do. Consider having the tank class use a static list to register, unregister live tanks to optimize this step. We'll consider that. Maybe there's not much overhead in this and, you know, we don't need to worry about it, but probably it's a good idea. In any case, we're going to loop through each one of these tanks. And this is running on the server, but at this point, the server should know what state each tank is in. If tank dot is... What do I call this? Oh, is it set to... Is it protected or private or whatever? I think it is. Public. There we go. Same thing. The class can set itself. Everything else can't. Tank has locked in. Does get set to false by default when we start a phase, so that's going to be okay. Excellent. So now we can say... And again, this is a Boolean, and maybe I would prefer, like, is locked in. Probably I do, actually. I'm going to change that in a second. Hang on a sec. So we're going to call this is locked in instead. Doom. If tank is locked in is equal to false. So what we do is we assume that we're good to go. What we're going to do is loop through each tank, and if we find one where they're not done yet, then instead we return false and just bail. Done and done. Sounds like, yeah, I don't know, but this is not my keyboard, so I don't know. It's kind of on the loud side. This is a mechanical keyboard, but I don't know what kind of keys there are. So it's going to be a little louder than usual because my microphone is actually on the table here. I don't have my mic stand here in Scotland, so normally my mic stand, the microphone is like on the table. You're going to hear more of the vibration come through, so there it is. Yes, I've talked about it before. The thing, you can do that. What I don't like about this in general, especially in my tutorials, but in general, the exclamation mark can easily be sort of like missed, but if you're like browsing through code really quickly. Whereas a big ass is equal to false is a lot more explicit. So that's why I do that, especially in my tutorials, but honestly I tend to do it in my code a lot as well. Doesn't take much time to write 6 extra characters, and it can save you a massive problem down the road if you are sort of inverting some logic in your head. Okay, so now we have this function here, so now we can actually have this be or is phase locked. So if we run out of time, or all the players are phase locked. Again, though, resolve is really a special case. Resolve is really going to be weird. Because the resolve turn state only ends when all the bullets and all the explosions and all the damage pop-ups and all the death animations have been played out. Yeah, so big, you know what, I don't like big nested if conditions, but this might be the place to do it. So if the turn state is not equal to resolve and the time left is less than or equal to 0, or players have all locked in their phases, that's one way for the turn to end. Otherwise, the other option is if we're here, so then if turn state is equal to turn state dot resolve and resolve phase is completed, then we advance. Those are 2 cases where we could advance. I am missing some sort of curly Q. Oh my, okay. Yes. There we go. Missing another one there. Excellent. All right, then we do that. So if we're not resolved, then we can advance the phase either if we run out of time or everyone's locked in. Good. And then otherwise we've got this. Again, this would probably be a good case for like using delegate functions to like just... So what I mean by this is you could have a function, like a placeholder function, like, so, you know, end of phase delegate function type. And this is like current end of phase func, like this. And then what you just do is do something like if current end of phase func is equal to true, then we end this. And then what you can do is you can change which function this is referencing to by linking it to different stuff. And if your phase, if your set of states gets kind of complicated, then that's a great way to do it. And like larger state machines can handle things like are like you need to do that sort of thing to stop this from being an unbelievable mess. But this structure of the game, as far as I'm aware, will always just have the 3 things, so it's fine. And yeah, link question. 1, as a tutorial, link can add some complexity. And 2, the link syntax makes me think a lot about when I used to be a Perl programmer, which means that sometimes you type stuff that would just look like, you know, line noise, you know, stuff. I'm just like semi just bashing on the keyboard here, but not really, right? You're talking about regular expressions and stuff. It gets really weird. And some link code can do that as well. Some of the link code means that it's a lot faster, but in this case, the for each loop is the exact same as using some of the link shit and looks less like voodoo. So there we go. All right. So if I've done this even vaguely correctly, I can now completely fuck up. Excuse me. Sorry, I really don't want to be cursing as much in the programming videos, although I think that's what happens a lot more. How come is phase lock must be returning true instantly here? Programming brings out the best early impressions. It's true. Cursing's an integral part of programming. It used to be funny. People used to laugh at me at my old day job because, like, they knew what kind of day I was having because they could hear me cursing through the walls. I'm assuming is phase lock is returning true over and over and over again. And advancing things. Yeah. Which means why is locked in unless there are no tanks? Oh, that's not where my pipe symbol is on this keyboard. Or tanks.length is equal to 0. No tanks yet? No tanks yet. And then we have tanks. Okay, and I can lock in. There we go. And I can lock in. So every time I hit space, we do advance the thing. What's the timing here? I guess it takes a couple of frames. Yeah, that makes sense, because when a player connects, they don't spawn a tank right away. It takes a couple of frames after a player, like after the server comes online, it takes maybe a frame for the player to properly connect, even though we're just connecting to ourselves. And then it takes another frame for the player object to be like, oh, I don't have a tank, I need a tank, or something like that. So there's a couple of frames where there are no tanks at all. So what we need, really, instead of checking here, what we need to do is not start the match until all the tanks have been spawned. Right? Like, there's got to be that sort of thing. Like, how do we actually determine when we start the match and then start progressing through all this, as an example? All right, like here, something like, so the turn number will always start at 0. Right, by default, even without us setting this, integers just get initially set to 0. But we could do something like, well, you might want a Boolean for like match has started. I was gonna do something like if it's turn 0, then match has started. I'm gonna have an explicit Boolean for like match has started, which is gonna be set to false. And then we actually start, right? Start new match. We'll set it to true, because there might be in between match times. We could be showing scores when the match isn't actually running. And then our update over here, right? Like there might be something happening here regardless, but if match has started is false, then we return. We don't run the update at all if the match hasn't officially started yet. And then we'll probably want some sort of countdown timer or something like that. So what triggers the match actually starting? Oh, and then something like, I can do a more, I guess, yeah, we will. Match has started. Equals true and. So if there's a state mismatch or the match hasn't started, this will return false. So we're only allowed to move and aim if the match has actually started. Otherwise, we're returning false messages and things like that. So that seems relatively sane to do here. And yeah, we'll probably do some sort of countdown timer. In fact, we'd probably do something like time left, actually set it to 3. And then do something like, you know, if match has started is equal to false, and time left, I don't know. If time left is greater than 0, then we return. I'm not pleased with this exactly, but else it's time to start the match. And then, so we do something at this point, like start new match. So we uncomment here, and instead of like 3 seconds, I'll do something like 0.5f. And just give half a second for someone to come to join up. We still, if there are no tanks, we still don't bother, like, we never say is phase lock. We never return true to advance the phase if there's no one in there. But then we got something like this. So it's like, technically there's a half second once we join in before the countdown starts, except I haven't done it right. Oh. Yeah, this is always really annoying. So I changed the number here, but this is a public variable, which means that it doesn't do anything unless you change it in the inspector. And I've spent so many decades of my life trying to debug problems because it's a value in the inspector. And I'm like, why? So you can put a non-serialized here. How do you put multiple of these tags? Do I go like non... Do I put them like this, or do we put them together? My God, how many people are going to ask the same questions? Kevin, I've answered the Boolean question about 30 times already this stream. Yeah, there's hide and inspect. No, hide and inspector doesn't do it. It doesn't show it in the inspector, but at this point, it's already serialized the value of 180 and leads to bonkersness. Yeah, with a comma, thank you. I'm pretty sure that's not right. Comma feels like it's probably correct. It's like hide and inspector doesn't actually fix the problem because it can already have serialized the value one time or something like that. Like we've run into that before too. I don't know. Anyway, there you go. 0.5. Now we're at the movement. I can't aim. I hit spacebar. I do this. Now we'll want some sort of other check for the match. I mean, clearly a match countdown, 3, 2, 1, or something like that. You know, or like, get ready to fight. Probably something like that. Like a countdown doesn't matter as much because it's not as real-timey, but a get ready to fight kind of screen would be a good idea. So we have some sort of like thingy like that. Same way we're gonna have some sort of resolve phase is completed. We'll actually probably have some sort of like match start screen has completed or some bullshit. In any case, the bug we were encountering has been fixed like this. By just making this check here, we won't run into the problem where it'll just cycle through 0 tanks and say, yeah, you can advance to the next phase. But yeah, there's clearly a little bit of a timing thing. So. Non-serializable. Oh, not sure if it's usable with syncvar. I don't think syncvar uses the serialization code. But it's an interesting question. Let's take a moment, and I think we're an hour and a half in. We've apparently mostly implemented turn-based stuff here. Let's do a little build and run over here. Builds, Panzer, and see if things are syncing up. Hey, Simon. Double check the tip jar over here. Oh yeah, we got Pat. And again, I don't know what did I screw up that it's not showing the last tip on the side anymore. Oh. Well then, that has been fixed. What can I do to make this even betterish? There we go. Maybe something like that. Maybe embiggen. Awesome. Still not exactly formatted the way that I had it before, but there we go. Okay. So Pat, thank you for contributing to the Whiskey and Chocolate and Iron Brew Fund. I admire your trust in your ability to draw an audience and the gratitude of your audience. Gaming is my passion. Programming is my career. Great content. Well, thank you very much, Pat. I still don't know why I have any kind of audience whatsoever, but it's cool. I appreciate you guys being here. I don't know why you watch, but let's keep it up. Okay, so for our first test, we will have Unity window over here be the host, and of course its own client as well. And then you are going to connect over here and do that and confirm that I cannot do anything. Interesting. All right. Very interesting. You're going to be the host. Allow access. Okay. And you're going to connect up as a client. Yeah, you cannot do that. Nor can you aim. So that's not it. So this check here, Game Manager tank can move, must be returning false, is my guess. In the client that is not the host. So in the client that is not the host, this must be returning false. Ah, of course. Of course. It's because we don't synchronize matches started. Nor actually do we synchronize turn state either. These both need to be sync vars. Right, and then we run into the problem where a property can't be a sync var. So we can use like internal stuff and things. Let's just make it a pure public right now. You know, it's the programmer's solution. We'll just make it a public. It's fine. Just a straight up public as opposed to a property. I mean, we can use an internal thing that's private and then the public thing, and we'll probably do something like that. Okay, let's have these things be synchronized now. That way, when the server changes what the current turn state and the current match has started, the clients know about it. That way, the clients know whether they're allowed to start, moving like that. Keep in mind, in theory, the server will also check. When you try to move, the server will check its own status and say, haha, you're trying to be fancy. But this way, the clients, the normal client that doesn't get hacked, just doesn't, do weird keyboard inputs either. Yeah, private with setters and getters is what we're going to have to do, and we'll probably do that in a second, but I want to confirm that this has fixed the problem, and then we'll clean up the accessibility in just a scooch. But there's also the problem, like right now we don't have a lobby, so like as soon as I start the host somewhere, then there's like the countdown, like the turns start right away. Oops, sorry, you're gonna log in as a client. So now I can move you, and over here you can move you. I will lock in. Notice the lock-in hasn't happened, but now the time is out, so now neither one of us can move. I will do that and lock in. I will do this and lock in, and now we are in the resolve phase, which just has a negative timer, and that's fine. Everything is working. The phase, we should probably have like, a tag that shows you what the current phase in, but if you like it, from my point of view, because I was doing it and I was clicking on things, it was very obvious what happened. So I'm gonna now host here, connect here. Some things don't get properly reset on a fresh run, which I can see why. We will have to respond to some of the things. Connect up, that's going to be okay. I can move me this way. I will move this one this way. Lock in, lock in. Now all of a sudden we're in the shooting phase. I will lock in, can no longer cycle. You're doing this. I can't move sideways. I'll move that way and lock in. And again, resolve where the shooting should actually happen. Good stuff. Okay, that's all set up right. Let's do a quick little cleanup of this. So what we really want, because we don't want anyone other than the game manager itself messing with the turn state, what we're actually going to want is a protected's default state, right? And for this, I like to do the thing, and this is fairly common in people. Do an underscore for this one to really emphasize the fact that you should never, ever, ever like muck around with this one. Like if ever you're accessing the underscored version, something's probably wonky and you shouldn't do it. But this is the thing that's going to be synced. We don't need the non-serialized anymore because it's not public, so Unity won't try to do it. And then what we do have as a public is just our getter and setter. And now we do have to write a little bit more code, unfortunately, because we have to say get, return, turn state, set, turn state is equal to value. Now, in this case, it wouldn't be so bad if internally, oh yeah, no semicolon there. If internally we set turn state, the underscore turn state directly. But in theory, we might set a variety of things over here. And oh yeah, and this would be the protected. Well, I guess we don't, yeah. I could just have the getter here, not provide a setter, and then no one could touch that. But I like having like the one interface. So we're just going to be messing with turn state. We can set it from within the game manager class itself. We can't set it any other way. And we could set it directly, and this should get synced, and that's going to be all right. And we'll do exactly the same thing over here, so we don't have to worry about non-serialized anymore. And what we're actually doing is having a float underscore. Actually, I guess I want to match the syntax exactly, is what I like to do, like that. I think there's a couple of different preferences that people have, but I like just the version that's got the underscore. We basically don't touch that. And then over here, and it would be nice if it was like, if there was a handy dandy way to just like autocomplete this, what I do here. Maybe there is. Return underscore time left, because this is a very like standard little return, time left is equal to value. Boom, done. Use the snippet propful. How would I do that? And Visual Studio is not something I have a lot of common experience with anymore. But there we go. So now time left is being synchronized without being freaking serialized through the inspector and causing us all kinds of annoying issues. Like, we're writing all this so that I can make a change in the code without breaking the inspector. Woo! Need resharper, refactor, and encapsulating property. Yeah. Yeah, there might be stuff for that. Might be stuff built in or a third-party thing. Yeah. Just about to finish C++, my VGDD class. Oh, video game design, I assume. This is exceptionally helpful for tidbits and other view on things. Yeah, cool. Start typing prop and then double space. So if I had something like int test prop tab. Right. It's not exactly what I meant, because it'd be nice if, like, I mean, let's say type in a property, some prop. Yeah, it'd be nice if there was a version that automatically created, oh, prop full, tab. Oh. Underscore some prop. I probably need to tab through. I don't know if it still remembers where I was. Underscore my prop tab. Yeah, no, it's not. It's not in that mode anymore. Try that one more time. Prop full tab. Thank you. That's exactly the sort of thing that will come in very, very, very handy. Maybe there's a way for it to automatically convert something that I've already done a different way, but I like it. Check refactor, right click. I don't see refactor, although this is a property, so maybe it's still weird. Hold on. Public int my prop. Right click. I don't see refactor. I might need something else. Anyway, good for now. Okay, so we're going to wrap this up here. We have most of the turn-based thing. We're closing in on 2 hours. So that's the place to do it. We do need some sort of special... like, for resolve, we don't actually want to start a new turn right away. Instead, we have debug.log error to do add turn resolution code, i.e. fire bullets. So this is going to call some other function that's going to tell all of the tanks to actually shoot their bullets. So this code that we commented out earlier, right over here, which is where tanks used to shoot their bullets when we hit spacebar. Now they don't shoot them when we hit spacebar. They just lock themselves in. So instead, now when we're in the resolve phase, everyone's going to shoot their bullets, and then there's going to be some sort of like probably registration at that point for like the various like the bullets that are currently active, explosion graphics that are currently active, dying animations that are currently active, and things like that. And then when all those things finish, when that list of things that are active becomes empty, then at that point, because that's what this check here will be, this resolve phase is completed. This is going to check that that list is empty. There's nothing else going on in the resolve phase. We can now go on to the next turn. So that's going to be what we tackle next time. First thing in the menu, is it? Maybe that was it. I was just assuming it was further down. Oh, quick actions and refactoring. Capsulate field and use property, but still use field. Just maybe do these two look exactly the same. Also, is it not control comma to bring that list up? Control comma. It looks like control comma is the command. Oh, is that period? Oh my god, this monitor resolution. Control period brings that up. Okay, thank you. That's very, very, very handy. It'll take me a little bit, but I will get like all like the shortcutting. Like I'm such a keen thing. Like all IDEs have their own like quirks and ways of doing it. And eventually, like using an IDE, like I like all the shortcuts, like both the shortcut keys, but also all the built-in helpers and things like that. But this is my first day really like taking a whack at Visual Studio in 1,000 years. Do you know that you can control left click a function variable to go to the declaration? Yeah, I do always right click, but control click, that's handy. Oh my god, it even turns everything into links. Thank you, I love you, you're great. I wonder if there's anything else. One of them will change references to property. Oh, it will tweak where everyone else gets called. I see. Whether it's using the internal value or the property everywhere else in the code. Ah, excellent. Thank you. Okay, so yes, we're gonna wrap this up. Hopefully I will not take too long getting set up in like my local Git setup over here to be able to actually push these changes out to the GitHub page. And hopefully I will actually get these videos uploaded soon. I know we haven't done last week's charity stream and everything yet. Hopefully we'll get them up soon. I will try real hard to get the videos online. Real hard. I know we got a busy day here in real life on tomorrow, Sunday, and on Monday as well. So it may take a few days, but I'm going to try real hard to get these up on the interwebs. We are going to be wrapping up the programming portion of the stream now. We're going to be loading up Crusader Kings 2 and doing a tutorial for complete beginners of Crusader Kings 2. I'm far from an expert in CK2, but I can sure as hell get you started on, murdering an entire dynasty and having a great old time in Crusader Kings 2, which is currently 100% free on Steam, like permanently. Just get on Steam, make sure before the end of the weekend you hit that button to grab the game. It'll be free added in there. We're going to do it without any DLC either, so it'll show you a good baseline experience of CK2 over there. And for those of you who are not following probably our multiplayer today, we're probably going to try to do a little StarCraft 2, which is also currently, well, and forever free. So see if you can download StarCraft 2 before we get started. Give me a short break to sort of fiddle around with things here and get things switched over. And like 2 minutes. Get up, stretch your legs a little bit, and we'll be back with some Crusader Kings 2. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in a scooch.